Welcome to Dear Dog Fanatic. I'm your host, Kirsten, but you can call me Kay. I am a dog mom of 3 and run a virtual dog training company called the Canine Detective. The stories we will be reading and reacting to today come from the AmItheAsshole subreddit. Down the Reddit rabbit hole we go. So our first story today is from Comfortable Grass 2, and it is titled, Would I Be the A-Hole for Choosing My Dogs Over My Kids? And we're going to read through the story, take a look at the comments, I'll give my takes, and then at the end we'll see what Reddit voted this user. So it starts off as, been married for 4 years. We have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. We also have 3 dogs who are 13 years old, 6 years old, and 7 months old. Okay, so they have a senior dog, an adult dog, and a puppy that's in the beginning of adolescence. I am a dog trainer and I love dogs. Ooh, this will be interesting. When I met my wife, I had 2 more dogs, but once he had kids, I had to downsize, unfortunately. Our marriage is great, but sometimes the dogs become a point of contention. Interesting. Don't get me wrong, I am not coming at this from a place of judgment. I don't think that someone is a bad person if they need to rehome their dog. If that's what's in the best interest of the dog and their family, makes total sense. What is odd to me is being a dog trainer and loving dogs and then made the decision previously to rehome some of your dogs. And then now with 3 dogs saying that you might need to rehome them as well. One can ethically, for a number of reasons, the number of dogs and that being a reason for rehoming is always an interesting one, particularly in this situation that this dog trainer had 2 more dogs when they had met their wife, but then had to downsize. They've been married for 4 years, which means that at that time, when they met their wife, they had their dog that is currently 13 and their dog that is currently 6. And if they downsized by 2, that they had 2 other dogs. So they had 4 dogs total when they met their wife, and they downsized once they had kids. But they have a 7-month-old. So they had already gone from 4 dogs down to 2, had 2 kids, and then decided to get a puppy. That's what I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around of the logic of that decision. But anyway, continuing. Tonight, my wife told me she's no longer comfortable with the dogs as our kids are getting older, and while my dogs are acclimatized to people, children are uncharted territory. The youngest pup butts heads with the oldest pup, which I'm trying to train out. Yeah, because you have a 13-year-old senior dog and you have a 7-month-old puppy, now adolescent. And yeah, when you have dogs, you are responsible for their relationship with one another and managing that dynamic. Eventually, my wife doesn't want to use baby gates and is worried that we have 3 dogs roaming around. I don't love this. Baby gates can be a really helpful management tool. And if you have 3 dogs and 2 kids, the kids are young. We have like a senior adult and a young dog. Management is important. You have 5 beings in your house that you're responsible for managing. We can argue one way or another about some people being like, oh, they're dogs, they're not children, not equal standing, blah, blah, blah. None of that matters to what I'm saying. What I'm saying is right now you have consciously signed up for the responsibility of having 5 beings that live in your household that you are responsible for their each individual well-being and the well-being of their whole group. So I would be a big proponent of having baby gates in place because baby gates, I think, are great. Using management tools are great when you have dogs and young children, period, because the interactions between dogs and young children should always be supervised. That is how you prevent having an accident. Also, one would suggest management tools and using baby gates and the like for a 7-month-old dog anyways, because puppies and adolescents can get into a lot of mischief. So default, having a puppy should have baby gates and management tools, and then having children and dogs should have baby gates and management tools. So this doubled the scenario. I just don't understand the logic. Okay, but OP continues. His wife, I'm going to rewind actually, because we don't mention names and ages and genders of any of the folks in this story. So OP says, she gave me an ultimatum that all 3 dogs need to be gone within 6 months. I told her I don't like this kind of tactic of ultimatums. She said, this is how it has to be done. Our children come first. Yeah, so fundamentally, I am looking at OP a little bit sideways, because if you're a dog trainer, you love dogs, you had 4 dogs at the time when you met your wife. I don't understand how you even got to this place. I don't understand how someone who loves dogs, who works with dogs professionally, would find themselves in a relationship with somebody who would ask you to get rid of your dogs. It sounds like she should have been with somebody with no dogs if she's uncomfortable with dogs and children cohabitating. Yeah, this is just a mess, and the situation should not have ever happened. OP continues, I want to keep the dogs so much so I'm willing to move out if I can keep them. Our marriage is great, but that doesn't mean we need to live together. If I can move to a house down the street and keep my dogs, I can still visit my kids every day, take them whenever needed or requested. Basically, nothing changes in being a dad. I can be over in a moment's notice. The difference is I can keep my dogs. It won't hurt me financially because I can afford a second house, and our neighborhood is a relatively new development, so there's always homes for sale nearby. I haven't broached this with anyone except this subreddit, I guess. Would I be the a-hole? And so I'm very curious to hear what the comments are, but I just don't see how that's going to work. Somebody who tells you that you need to get rid of your dogs is not going to be okay with you moving to a separate house and keeping those dogs. She's going to call you an absentee. You refer to yourself as a dad here, a father. That isn't going to be responsible parenting, because, yeah, you would be choosing your dogs over your kids in this scenario. And in this situation, you shouldn't be having to choose one over the other. I would definitely recommend relationship counseling, because it sounds like you guys probably aren't on the same page around what raising your children looks like, and maybe even your career of being a professional dog trainer. I don't think you can be considered to be a good parent if you will kind of abandon your kids to move out to keep your dogs. If this is an ultimatum from your wife, you need to decide for yourself, are you willing to give in to this kind of demand? If you are, and you're not going to keep your dogs, maybe you should also be finding a different profession. It just seems to me that your wife wouldn't be super supportive of you having dogs and working with dogs and the importance that this has for you if she's telling you to get rid of your dogs within the next 6 months. So the end result in this is probably going to be that you're going to end up separating from your wife, keeping your dogs, and getting your kids part-time. That's just how I see this road going down, which is effectively what you're kind of proposing to her, except that, you stay married. But somebody who's telling you have to get rid of your dogs, I don't think that they're going to come to that kind of compromise. But let's see what the comments say. Deleted user says, you're the a-hole. Only on Reddit will people tell you it's okay to abandon your children for your dogs. And this is what I'm saying. I don't think that you can do that. And obviously, I am a dog-obsessed individual. You're not trying to choose your dogs over your kids from your post, what I'm understanding. Your wife is giving you that ultimatum. So I think the decision is that you choose whether or not this is a marriage and a relationship that you yourself are okay with, and then make your family planning decisions accordingly. Please do not add more dogs into this relationship. That would be irresponsible. And if this is a hard line that you're willing to give into, talk to your breeders or the rescues you got your dogs from. Make sure that they are responsibly rehomed, and then do not get any more dogs if that is the route that you're going to take. Maximum Janet says, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills reading the replies here. Dude is literally willing to move away from his children to get what he wants in a failed argument between him and his wife, but somehow his wife is the only one in the wrong here. I think that they're both in the wrong. I don't know why they're together. And this is not me saying I am not the expert on their relationship or anything. I am a dog trainer and a dog mom, dog owner, whatever you want to call it. I have 3 dogs. I couldn't imagine staying in a relationship with somebody who's telling me to get rid of my dogs. And B, I don't know, I would never have gotten into a relationship with somebody who would ask that of me. So I just don't even know how they got here. Life is Cool, I guess, says this is why subs like r/dog free exist. I don't hate dogs, but you can see how they have a point about how crazy dog lovers can be. Totally. And this is the thing. I think OP would be the a-hole if he chose the dogs over his kids. And I don't think that is actually what the situation is here. It's going to be whether or not he chooses the dogs over his marriage. It's not about his kids. But it sounds like he really values his marriage and relationship and thinks that it is healthy. So if that is the case, then you do choose your relationship over your dogs, and then you get no more dogs ever, okay? If that's the case, at that point you have downsize 5 dogs. No more dogs for you, because it's not responsible rehoming at that point. It is being rather cavalier with the dogs in your life. Okay. Inside Person responds to that comment saying, that sub is great. There are countless posts from people like OP's wife who might need to vent about their living situation and ask for advice about putting children before spouses' dogs. Born Bruce replies to that saying, that sub isn't great. The sub is weird and toxic, just like r/child free. I don't like kids and don't hang out there because of how freaking bizarre people are there. r/dog free is the same. A ton of extremists who act like every dog is an untrained pit out to kill them. This is saying nothing of OP's situation, but don't send people to that sucky place. And I will just call out, I like pity breeds. I think that people who make generalized statements about certain dog breeds a lot of times do not have knowledge and understanding of those kinds of dog breeds. There are exceptions, but generally I would suggest to be wary about people who make widespread comments about dog breeds and their proponent and their tendency to behave in certain ways, because a lot of the times that is largely influenced by how the humans interact. And then deleted user replies to that saying, that is not true at all. There are quite a few people on Dog Free who are dog owners themselves that just want to hate on sucky dog owners. A lot of comments seem to be taking the wife's side and kind of supporting like the choosing the dogs over the kids. What I don't understand is I think OP is an unreliable narrator here for a multitude of reasons, but one of which is there is nothing in this post that has stated that the dogs are a danger to children. There are instances and very legitimate cases where it is the responsible thing to do to rehome a dog when you have a child because of the danger. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, there are people out there with dogs and kids and are doing an amazing job parenting both, and the kids are not in danger. So this is like a case-by-case situational basis. And what I am struggling with is if someone came to me with this dilemma, and of course, unlikely that this dog trainer would come to me asking for my opinion, but I just don't see anywhere in this post, and I keep rereading it, but like I don't understand where the cause of conflict is. I'm not seeing anywhere in here that like, hey, my dog has like nipped at my child. I'm not seeing my dogs are big and are knocking my kids over. Like I wish that OP had given context about why the wife is concerned about the dogs, like what has happened to have that concern. And this could just be a fear on the wife's part, which again, people have had bad experiences with their dogs. This is valid, but I don't understand. The only thing I'm seeing that is maybe alluding to this is that the line that says the youngest pup butts heads with the oldest pup, which I'm trying to train out. So butts heads. What does that mean? Does that mean your dogs are getting into fights? Does this mean that there is some very natural doggy communication around growling and setting boundaries by the older dog and just telling the younger dog to like, yeah, hey, please don't do that? Do you as a dog trainer and dog owner know the difference between these things, and maybe your wife doesn't, and so therefore she is looking at behaviors that are normal and not unsafe as being unsafe? I don't know, because really there is not a lot of context provided here. I'm going to read a couple more comments and then the edit, and we will move on. Beep Borp, Beep Borp, Pi Majorp says, I am more concerned that there's no hint of compromise anywhere. I adore my dogs, but 3 dogs with one of them being essentially a puppy in a house with a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old is a lot. Yeah, it is. And this is what Like, I don't understand how the 7-month-old got here. Not that one can't do it in that situation, but A, it's difficult, and B, where was this objection from the wife 7 months ago? This user says, I've had 3 dogs in my household before, and the difference between even having 2 to moving up to 3 is pretty enormous and taxing. Yeah, 100%. Because people ask me, because I have 3 dogs, right? And definitely the jump from 2 to 3 was way more significant than 1 to 2 for me. I can't imagine having 3 dogs with 2 small children running around. Yeah, just, again, timing. I'm sure someone else is going to respond with, but yeah, when I was a kid, my family had like 8 dogs and it turned out fine. And like that's what I'm saying. Some people can. It depends on the person. And clearly this family cannot. The user says, but in my experience, 3 dogs is really draining. And he originally had 4, and 2 of the dogs, in his words, butt heads, which I can understand the wife being anxious about in this situation as these children learn to get around on their own. And OP got the 7-month-old after his latest kid had been born while knowing his wife was uncomfortable with the amount that they already had. Yeah, you're the a-hole for those 2 points alone, OP. At the very least, you probably need to rehome the puppy. There's no way I'd let anyone make me get rid of my 12-year-old dog, and OP's a dog is 13. But he is incredibly docile due to his age. If the 6-year-old dog is well-trained, crate-trained, TC, it's probably fine. But a puppy, don't think of rehoming a dog as giving up on it. Think of it as making the best choice for your family and the dog. Yeah, like I said, responsible rehoming, thumbs up. The phrasing of downsizing in this situation gives a little bit of a side eye. My dramatic persona replies to that comment saying, he already started compromising by downsizing to 3 dogs. He downsized to 2, actually. I don't think getting a new house for him and the dogs is a good compromise. But the primary a-hole here is the wife who married a dog trainer with 5 dogs is now trying to force him to choose between his dogs and his children. This is something she should have seen coming and dealt with way before this. And to clarify, I do think everyone sucks here. And that is my thinking. In the current situation, everyone sucks here. If OP decided to get a house and move away from his kids and keep his dogs, he would be the a-hole for that. And Beep Borp Pimajorp replied to that comment saying he downsized to 2 dogs and then brought in a 3rd after his 2 kids were born, already knowing his wife was uncomfy with that amount. So she did see it coming and did deal with it. OP just decided to fly in the face of that and adopt a puppy right after his 1-year-old was born because ... Yeah. My dramatic persona replied to that saying if he bought the puppy without consulting her, that's definitely an a-hole thing to do. We don't know if that happened. Also, if she's currently asking him to rehome one of the dogs with a specific problem, then I'd be a lot more sympathetic. And Beep Bonko replies to this kind of thread being like, the youngest dog is younger than their baby. He didn't downsize to that. He added a puppy when they had a newborn. So let us read the edit. Clarified, young dog butts heads with older dog, not my youngest child. So I guess some commenters were confused. And of course, the sub voted this guy as the a-hole, and rightly so, because I think that he is the a-hole. Just the fact that they're in this scenario makes him the a-hole. And then if he went through with choosing his dogs over his kids, because yes, if he moved into a different house, that is what he would be doing. That would also make him the a-hole. It also for sure would end their marriage, which he seems to think is really great. I'm very curious if the wife has the same perspectives as he does on the situation. But it sounds like the ultimate thing, if you're happy in the marriage, which it sounds like he is, and the best thing for your kids would be to listen to your wife. I would speak to a marriage counselor if you haven't already. OP definitely needs to in this situation because this whole dynamic is not good. Yeah, very disappointing to hear, and very disappointing to hear from another dog trainer, and I'm very curious how that even goes with all of this. Anyway, feel free and let me know in the comments. I'm sure some people will disagree with me on various points that I made, but I would never not choose my dogs, but also I would never have been with somebody that would ask me to. So, as with so many things with dogs, it is a compatibility issue. Seek therapy. I say this with love. Everybody should get therapy. The world would be a better place if more people were more reflective about their choices and who they are as people and how they show up in the world. But anyway, let's move on to this next story. So our second story here is from The Great Do-Over, and it is titled, Am I the a-hole for not getting another dog? My kid, 15 female, has had 2 dogs their entire life. Recently, one dog passed due to old age. Oh, I'm sorry. Considering the health and average lifespan, our remaining dog probably has 3 to 4 years left. Our dogs have always been rescues and I love them very much. Recently, my kiddo has been wanting another dog. I've explained to them that I don't want the responsibility of a dog after they leave home and go to college. That dog has a minimum of 15-year commitment and they will not be able to take the dog with them to college. Their heart is broken. Am I the a-hole for not getting another dog? No, not at all. You are super responsible. I love this. I understand why your kiddo would be wanting another dog because obviously they've had those 2 dogs for their whole life. Very likely that you're, and again, I don't know the age of your current pupper, but your estimate of 3 to 4 years left sounds like this doggo will pass away around the time that your kid is graduating high school and going off to college. So your kid will always have a dog while they're living at home and that sort of thing. And it is very responsible for you to have considered that it is another 15-year commitment, again, averaging between like 10 and 20 years, depending on the dog breed. And you don't want to have the responsibility of another dog. And that is totally valid. You've thought this through. When your kiddo in a position in the future, they can get their own dog. But let us hear from some other users. This Reddit user is called Just Another A-hole. Love that for the sub. And they say, not the a-hole yet, but if a young pup is out of the question, are you open to the idea of getting a senior? Oh, yeah, that's another really great suggestion. They get overlooked all the time, but you get a few good years in with them before the inevitable. And I think that that is a really good idea. But again, I would take a look at what is your current pupper like? Because would they benefit from having another dog around? Maybe yes, maybe no. It depends on the dog, especially as they themselves are in or approaching their senior years. But definitely, like, I think an older dog would be really great. The other thing you could look into as well, if this is something you're even open to considering of having a second dog, a lot of rescues really, really appreciate and are always actively looking for, as this helps with looking after more dogs, taking more dogs on, placement rates. If that is something that you want to do, that you can handle and is in the best interest of your other pup in the house, that's also something that you can consider. But Rach Slixie says, not the a-hole. I'm a big believer that pets belong to the parents. Yep, 100%. If you're a parent, do not get a dog unless you are willing to take on that responsibility yourself. That dog is your dog. Don't expect it to be your kiddo's. If your kiddo steps up, amazing, legally and morally, that dog is your responsibility. Kids are too inconsistent, and given the commitment required, is unreasonable to put the responsibility on them. So no, if you don't want the 15-year commitment, not the a-hole. Lovely Lilac73 responds to that comment and says this: you will be the one taking care of the dog ultimately, so it's your decision. We're kind of in the same spot. Our current dog is 15. My kids and teens will likely be heading to college in a few years. The care of the dog will be on me and my husband, mostly me because I'm home more often. I do not want that responsibility in the future, so no dog for us despite how much I love them. Yeah, that's awesome. Last comment that I will share today, which is Guilty Pie 4614. I grew up with dogs and loved them more than anything. Our last dog died when I was 16. My parents did not want another dog. I was furious and swore to myself I would get a dog as soon as I moved out. Where I live, you start university at 18 or 19, so I moved out at 19, started university, had to work 2 part-time jobs. By the time I was mature enough to understand why a dog wouldn't fit into my current life and why it wouldn't have fit into my parents' lives as well. I swore to myself I'd get a dog as soon as my circumstances would allow it. That was when I was 31. I was able to make this wish come true. If you really love dogs, you want them to lead a happy life and be well cared for. And part of loving dogs is to understand when it would be unreasonable to get one. You're not the a-hole, and your daughter will understand that in time as well. Just stick to your decision and make absolutely sure no well-meaning aunt, uncle, grandpa gets her a surprise dog because the neighbor had puppies or some BS like that. Yep. Okay, and obviously this person, the overall ruling was there were no a-holes here. And yeah, I would 100% agree with that. Hopping in to our next story here. Again, all of these stories today are from the Am I the A-hole subreddit. This user is Makeshift Pacemaker, interesting name. And the story says, am I the a-hole for refusing to have any pets inside our house due to my allergies and how I was raised? Immediately, I'm going to say this is an incompatibility issue. So here's the situation. My fiance, 25 female, and I, 26 male, are planning our wedding for next year. And we've already got a house and a young daughter together. Okay, so you guys are in it no matter what. You've got a kiddo together. The issue is about pets in the house. My fiance comes from a family where they have always had multiple pets inside. Her mom currently has like 4 dogs and 4 cats all living indoors. Meanwhile, I was raised differently. We had dogs, but they were outdoor dogs. We took great care of them, but they never came inside. Yeah, and this is an interesting one and a very interesting debate that I have encountered a lot. My dogs are indoor dogs. My family has always had indoor dogs, but my partner, fiance, funnily enough as well, is from Ireland. And his family comes from more of a farming background. So they had dogs, but they were always outside dogs, either working dogs or like rescued dogs that were working, and they lived outside. And it's an interesting ethical dilemma that has a lot of nuances. And I'm reluctant to say a blanket, oh, dogs should or should not live inside or outside, because it does really depend. But one should have a look at the context that you're currently living in. Why is your dog living outside if they're living outside? There are, working breeds like husky sled dogs where they have their own little like dog houses, and they all a lot of times live outside in their own areas, and that is what works for them in their kennel. There are livestock guardians, so farmers of some of these really large dogs, and those dogs have jobs to protect their flocks from things like coyotes and wolves to be a deterrent and what have you. Now, it becomes an interesting question if your dog does not have a job and they are just living outside. And I am not one to say this automatically makes you an irresponsible dog owner or you shouldn't do that, because again, there's a lot of nuance. And I know that I'm coming from a place of both privilege and from the bias that I was born and raised in Canada. So I have North American sensibilities when it comes to dog ownership and what that means. And that is not necessarily applicable worldwide. I don't know where OP is writing in from. So yeah, now that I've given my little rant, we will get back to the story. Now that we have our own place, I've told my fiance I don't want any pets indoors because I have severe allergies to cats and dogs. Oh, okay. So also, this conversation should have been had before getting engaged and before having a kiddo. I'm curious, like, if you guys were together for a while and this never came up, it is possible that maybe, kiddo was an oopsie and now you're getting married and that's why you haven't talked about a lot of these things. But if you've already had the big convos of like, you're getting married, you have a kiddo, and you have a house, how did the stance on animals not come up before now? I feel like maybe OP was intentionally deceptive about this or changed their mind, because I just don't see how this could not have come up previously. But OP says, my fiance actually recently got tested and found out she's allergic to cats and dogs too. She just never realized it because she grew up around them. Plus, I wasn't raised with the idea of having animals living inside, and I feel strongly about keeping the house free of pet hair and potential damage. I've offered to get an outdoor dog and make sure it has a great setup with a nice dog house, plenty of space, and all the care it needs. But my fiance and her mom think I'm being unreasonable. Her mom even said I'd have to eventually accept a dog inside the house because that's just how they do things. They kind of make me feel like I'm the a-hole for sticking to my boundaries, even though it's largely about my allergies and how I grew up. Your allergies and how you grew up are inconsequential in that they can explain why you have a particular stance, but that is still your stance. There are people that had your upbringing and have allergies to dogs and they still have indoor dogs. So this is not me saying that they are right and you're wrong or anything. It's just that the context explains how you arrived at your conclusion, but it's not a be-all end-all explanation, because similar people in similar situations can also have different opinions to do, is basically what I'm trying to get at. OP ends this with, so am I the a-hole for not wanting pets inside and insisting on keeping any dog outdoors? And they have an edit. I understand about having no pets at all seems like an easy fix, But stating that we can't have pets at all to my fiance and her mom is equally as bad to them as saying we'd have to have them outside. Yeah. And so again, I go back to what I said before I even read this story. This sounds like an incompatibility issue. Probably you guys shouldn't have been together in the first place. Because dogs and children are not the same. I'm not at all equating that they are. However, similar principles to dating, where it's not something you can compromise on. At some point, it is binary. Do you want kids or do you not want kids? The compromise can be in the number, sure, if the answer is yes. But somebody who does not want kids should not be with somebody who wants them. Similar idea for pets. If you do not want pets, do not date somebody who wants pets. Because then you're setting yourself up for failure. You're going to be in this situation and you're going to resent one another. But let us read some comments from users. Mayflower7310 says, well, as a former pet sitter and lifelong pet owner, I feel it's better to not have a dog than to get one that must be relegated to an outdoor area. Dogs are pack animals. They need to be with their pack, and being domesticated, they enjoy human company. Sorry about your allergies, but this is not a good option for dogs. Farler5 responds to that saying, absolutely agree. My animals are part of my family. They're inside being loved. And I will point out, and people can, again, agree or disagree on whether or not something this should or should not be the case, but at least where I am, a lot of breeders, like ethical, responsible breeders, and a lot of rescues would not sell or adopt a dog to somebody in this situation, because a lot of those adoption processes in your contracts and even in your application, they will state that the dog needs to live inside and be treated as a member of the family. So I also just don't think you would be able to get a dog from an ethical source with this stance, even if you wanted to. Cyberpunk87 says, I'm going to say you're the a-hole for wanting an outdoor dog, with a few exceptions, working dogs, for example. It's just a sucky way for an animal to exist. I don't care if that's how you were raised. Just don't get a pet, or get a pet that you're not allergic to that you can keep in the house. Endless Typist says absolutely this. You're the a-hole, no outside pets. Just don't get pets at all and don't compromise in a way that will lead to a bad life for an animal. Casey Josephine says, I agree. It's insanely cruel to have an outdoor dog. It would be better just not to have a dog. Dogs bond with their people, and keeping them separated is a recipe for anxiety and stress. I don't believe that OP's dogs were actually treated well, like they're referring to their family dogs growing up. I do not think OP deserves to have a dog. Someone who's willing to ignore an animal's needs for their own convenience is not fit to have a pet. Killer Barbie responds to that saying, yep, even my working dog comes inside when I do. We get out of the bush and it's time for a tick check, meal, and often a bath. I will shout this out. Spicy Canadian says, you're the a-hole if you get pets, not the a-hole if you decide no pets. They belong inside with a loving family. And yeah, Maxi0921, again, sorry, I'm just going to shout this out because I'm being validated here by comments that had similar thoughts to me. You're the a-hole to both of you. How did you get to the point of being fiancés without this discussion? It's absolutely ridiculous when it's a major life concern, and people are maybe going to disagree with this. Even the marriage to me is like secondary. You bought a house and you had a child with somebody and didn't have this discussion beforehand. And it just kind of happened. XX response to that saying, it sounds like they had a kid and now feel like they should get married regardless if they are compatible or not. Starlight Wizard says to that, I think so too. If they can't agree or compromise on pets, then maybe they just aren't compatible partners and should consider co-parenting in separate households. Yep. And this person was voted the a-hole. Rightfully so. Okay, and our next story here from C-Ship50 and 69 says, am I the a-hole for not wanting to split dog ownership costs and responsibility 50-50? This will be a very interesting one because I'm curious 50-50 with whom. If you're in a relationship, let's read. My girlfriend, 24, wants to get a cat or a dog. I, 26M, am not particularly opposed, but I have much more mixed feelings. Dogs and cats are obviously great fun, but I have concerns around, and we'll get into this list together. But already I'm going to say too, it's interesting because it is a girlfriend, not wife or fiance. And the only reason I point that is there's a degree of implied commitment in the latter two. And so I would be cautious about adopting an animal with somebody when you are in a stage of figuring out whether or not the two of you want to be together long term, as well as you guys are on the younger side. And there are a lot of people in their early to mid-20s who are super great dog owners, but it's a large responsibility, and I would be certain on where you stand and what your plans are for the future before you take on a 15-year commitment. So his points on why he has concerns are that his lifestyle, they travel a lot, or at least before COVID. Before COVID-19, they went to Hong Kong, Canada, Chicago, Hawaii, and Mexico. And his girlfriend also went to Florida, New York, and LA on other trips that he wasn't on. This doesn't include a bunch of ski trips, Lake Tahoe several times, Mammoth Mountain, and Aspen. Yeah, and so it's super important. Dogs, kiddos, whatever, you need to have a plan for when you can't look after them. Who's looking after them? Do you have friends and family? Don't assume, ask them beforehand. Do you have the funds to hire a pet sitter or babysitter, what have you? You need to think these things through. It's part of the responsibility of being the guardian for something that's living. OP is also considered about the cost somewhat. Pets are, of course, pretty expensive in like the thousands per year's bracket, but they also both work in big tech and make around $300K a year each. Okay, so they also make like K together. That is A, well, like good for them. B, I definitely think that you can afford a pet. And OP says, yeah, this is definitely more about emotional pain, a purchase, because we can obviously afford it. Yeah, 100%. Additional responsibility and mental load of taking care of a pet. Things like expected and unexpected vet visits, grooming, walking, additional cleaning due to shedding, etc. I am kind of in the mode of this here, and somebody, if I knew who it was, I would quote them, and so please comment below. But somebody once said, and I agree with this, a lot of people think that they want a dog, but really what they want is a cat, like a well-socialized, well-behaved cat. It's how independent do you want your pet to be, and how much work do you want it to be? A lot of times dogs are just more expensive, and there are more considerations to take into account. And again, a lot of it comes down to how you pet parent, how you raise your fluffy bean. But in terms of costs, even, it would be less expensive to hire a cat sitter than it would be a dog. Just speaking as somebody who has worked in the industry, and I've worked in boarding facilities. I've worked as a dog walker that also dog sat. I know like what the numbers look like, at least in my area of the world, and it would cost less for the cat, as well as the fact that because you travel so often, I think picking a creature that is a bit more independent in general would be a smarter. I've never had a cat, but I have a lot of really good friends that have cats, and this is just the impression that I get, but if I'm incorrect in any of my assumptions, please let me know. Continuing with OP, she's aware of the above considerations, but is pretty adamant about getting a pet anyways because we have a high income, we can pay as much pet sitting as we need, as well as additional services like cleaning our yard, dog walking if we're busy, etc. She even used to be allergic, but paid for allergy shots once a week for the past year and a half and doesn't appear to be allergic anymore. Yeah, so she clearly, very, very clearly wants a pet, and this is back to what I was saying. It's a fundamental incompatibility issue if one is not willing to agree on this. It's like, do you want a pet or no? Do you want kids or no? If you're not on the same side of that binary line, then you're not compatible, and she will resent you for it. Because imagine not being able to have a cat because your partner said no, that person just probably shouldn't be your partner because you're not able to live a fulfilling life, like a life that's fulfilling to you. You can choose to not have any of those things and be fulfilled, but if that is something that you want, then you need to find somebody that wants that too. You know? Because she's much more into the idea of getting a pet, I propose splitting the costs in a way other than 50-50, but she didn't think this was reasonable. One extreme, of course, is her paying all of the cost and handling all the responsibilities, but this is also probably unreasonable. We also live together in a house that we co-own in case it's relevant. TLDR, girlfriend wants a dog. I have mixed feelings. I don't want to be responsible for 50% of the cost and responsibility. Am I the a-hole? I will read what the commenters say and then get to the judgment. I don't think that he is the a-hole, but I don't think he actually wants a life with his girlfriend. And I say this because not wanting to pay the cost 50-50, and even more, in my opinion, not wanting to have the responsibility 50-50. It depends. There are some people where, for instance, in my relationship, my fiance is a huge help. Great dog dad, loves our dogs. But in terms of the actual like day-to-day care, all of their appointments, like organizing, that is me. That is what I do for our dogs. But also my partner always liked dogs and always wanted to have dogs. But these guys are my responsibility ultimately. When I signed all the breeder contracts, they even say, and a lot of reputable breeders and rescues do this as well, like in the event of a relationship breakdown, who gets the dog? And that's me. My dogs have my last name. We have a great partnership, but like if anything, God forbid, knocking on wood here, ever happens, the dogs will be mine. And so I think that that is an important part of the discussion to have as well, as it doesn't mention the post either of whether or not OP and his girlfriend want kids. And I will just say it's not the be all end all, but I think it would be a little bit of a red flag if they did want kids and this was his thought process going into having a pet, because having a child is so much more responsibility. So I think it is a good test run or kind of like temperature check around what your dynamic having kids will look like if this is his stance around money and responsibility of pet rearing. But let's see the comments. Pumpernickel Brut. So I like pumpernickel bread. Not the a-hole. She can easily afford the dog without your financial support. Yeah, at $300K a year, she can just get a dog and and that dog is just your roommate. And she's the one wanting one. So why does she think you should pay half the costs? Obviously, it would be her dog, not yours. And that would be the thing going into this relationship too. You guys, even though you co-own a home together, but you're not married, it would be her dog. If there was a relationship breakdown, the dog would go with her. So Webix says, I think the acronym stands for you're both the a-hole. Clearly, two don't have the ability to care for this animal properly if your solution to every scenario is to throw money at it. If you guys can't clean up after your own yard after it uses the bathroom, you're not ready. I disagree with this take because, we'll continue with it, but I will point out there are people that hire dog walkers. You're working 9 to 5, and if you can afford to hire a dog walker to take your dog out so they get the exercise they need, they don't need to hold their pee, and they don't have any accidents in your home, I think that's super responsible if that is like something you're in a position to be able to do. There's also, and I have employed this service before, that like there are people that do dog poop pickup companies, and I think it is dangerous to put that kind of blanket statement to say like, oh, if you can't do that, but you can afford to throw money at it, that makes you irresponsible, because there are people that can do things better than you can. And so you can expand this to even like dog grooming and things like that. Theoretically, you could groom your own dog, or you could pay a professional to do it. Paying the professional to do it does not mean that you are a worse dog owner than people who groom their dogs themselves. It also does speak to a bit of a class issue around of if you look at more affluent families that have the capacity to like put their kids in private school and pay for private tutors and this, that, and the other thing. What about the people, more affluent or not, that put their kid in after school programs instead of like watching them after work so they can either like work later or go run errands or things like that? So I would just be careful of this kind of blanket statement. But this user continues, if you think it costs thousands of dollars a year to have shows, you're out of touch with the base idea of pet ownership. Not sure if they think they're of the stance it costs more or less than that. Lastly, the emotional pain of purchase. What does that even mean? You're going to be emotionally unstable with just the act of purchasing the animal. I think the emotional pain of purchase that OP's talking about probably refers to like he doesn't want to pay the money. So while he can afford to, he just resents the idea of having to pay for it. But this user continues, your girlfriend might have good intentions, or she's just going to get sick of the animal if the first bit of actual work or effort brought forth. You seem to be out of touch with this whole situation in general, but gain points for at least acknowledging the issues at hand. Don't get this pet. There are enough animals in shelters. Let's spare another just because its owners got sick of dealing with it after 6 months. And so OP actually responds to this comment and says, appreciate the comment. By pain of purchase, I meant the loss felt when paying for things. About the costs, I'm aware that we are privileged in being able to pay for certain luxury services. I'm genuinely curious, why do you feel It means we aren't ready. Spriggan75 responds to that comment from OP saying, do you sit down and consider the pain of purchase before everything you buy? That sounds exhausting. And I'm just going to say to this too, this all comes down to priorities as well. The pain of purchase is definitely a valid thing, but really what this says is how much you value something. If you resent having to purchase this thing, a lot of times it means that like it's not something you actually want to be paying for, rightly or wrongly, for a variety of things. And so if you feel like this about something for your pet or having a pet in general, probably a pet is not a responsibility that you're wanting to take on. This user continues more along like the purchasing point of course, every major purpose needs a bit of thought, but deciding how to sensibly use your money is a part of adulthood. If you're confident in your decision, then it shouldn't be painful. The fact that we're talking about sentient being here and not a sofa is really more the issue. Yeah, exactly. We have Jabon Blue Jeans saying, firstly, I commend you both for having a real conversation about pet ownership before getting a pet. I wish more people would do this. Secondly, I agree with you on principle. If she wants the pet, she should take the majority of the financial and logistical burden. And I agree with this because that is where I was at with my guys in the beginning, especially because we were not super far into our relationship when I got Velma. But I was also very clear up front of like, if we break up, this is my dog. I paid for her, like, you know, her fee, all of the vaccinations and things like this when she was a puppy when I got her from the breeder. And I think that that is the perspective that anyone should have if you are in a relationship that is not permanent. But Jabon, it's spelled Jabbaln, Blue Jeans, says as well. However, you need to prepare yourself that even when she agrees on the 70-30 split or whatever you decide to do, it may not actually work out that way once the pet arrives. If you're going to be resentful or neglectful when surprised with unexpected costs or responsibility, then maybe pet ownership isn't for you, not the a-hole. I'm just scrolling to see so many people are like, not the a-holes. I'm just scrolling to see if we can find any like different comments. Marhina says, dog is a relationship step. This is a test. Trozy responds to this saying, people shouldn't get pets as relationship tests, just as they shouldn't have kids to keep a person or test a relationship. These are living things we're talking about, so sad. And Jabon from earlier responds to that comment saying, I never considered this possibility. Is it the idea that if he's ready for a pet, then he's ready for a marriage? And Marhina responds to that comment saying, possibly, or that if he can't commit to a pet, he will be unhelpful as a dad. There's a lot of nuances possible. I'm not even saying she's doing it on purpose, but it is telling, I'll let you get a pet, but you're paying 100% and taking 100% care of it. It doesn't sound good coming from a prospective husband/dad. Yeah. And so and there are some people, but this is their relationship dynamic. It is more traditional of, hey, I pay for everything and I just don't have any of the child care or pet care responsibilities. It's all on you. But traditionally, this comes from when someone else is paying all the bills, the other person is staying at home. But in this case, they both make a lot of money. So it just comes down to whether or not she feels like the relationship would be worth it if they entered that dynamic. Yeah. Alternatively, I don't care about your emotional needs because I'd rather travel is also telling. Ultimately, people settle down eventually. Many couples do it slowly by adding these types of responsibility. Yeah. And again, kind of weird because they also already have a home that they've bought together. And it could be that girlfriend would rather nurture something than travel all the time. That's fine too. She may not be testing him at all. She may just want a pet. We don't know the girlfriend's perspective. She may or may not be testing him, but irrespective of if she's actually testing him, what Marhina said here was correct in that whatever OP decides is telling one way or another of where he stands on a variety of things and what she can count on him to do in different circumstances. And neither of those are right or wrong. It's just an indication of whether or not these two are actually compatible and should stay together long term. Let's move on to our last story. This comes from He Doesn't Like Dogs. Am I the a-hole for telling my family that we have to get rid of the dog? I, 43M, have never been a dog person. Okay, so maybe it's not a throwaway. Maybe I had assumed it was going to come from the other partner's point of view. But no, this is the he in question is OP. I, 43M, have never been a dog person. I like them from a distance, but that's about it. My friends and family are very much aware of this, and despite their best efforts, my opinion remains the same. And, that's the case. That's just what it is with some people. That is no biggie. So long as, again, we're on the same page. You're with somebody that's okay with that. Back to the story. At the start of the COVID pandemic, my kids began begging for a pet. My wife really wanted a dog, but I was firmly against it. I'm not much of an animal lover. We have a pretty tight budget. We both work, so we don't have a lot of free time to spend with the pet. After several discussions, we decided not to get a dog, or so I thought. Okay. All of the points OP said here were super valid. He doesn't like dogs, they have a tight budget, and they both work a lot. So it sounds like they weren't in much of a position to get a dog in the first place. But also, and in this case, probably it's the wife. Say like the wife was the a-hole even before getting into the story of why did you marry somebody if, and who knows, maybe it was a new thing. Maybe she was never really wanting a dog before this, but why would you marry somebody and have kids with them if you want dogs and they are very adamant that they do not like dogs? Then she is the a-hole for not listening to him and believing him when he said that, this is not a responsibility he wants. He doesn't like dogs. Don't get with people and attempt to change them. I don't like that OP's family and friends are trying to change his opinion. It's like, maybe sure, initially you say, oh, maybe it's not all dogs, or maybe your opinion has changed. But once OP, this is a long-standing issue, that's just who he is as a person. Just leave him be. But anyway, back to the story. 3 weeks ago, I came home from work and was greeted at the door by my kids, who are 6 female and 10 male. My youngest was grinning ear to ear and jumping up and down. She told me they had a surprise for me. Before I could take off my shoes, a small black lab bounced on me. My wife laughed and said she liked me. Oh, this is also so bad. She went behind his back, got the kids attached. You can't do that. My wife thought it would be a good idea to completely blindside me with my new dog. Apparently, she had heard stories of tons of men being firmly anti-dog, changed their mind after getting a pet. She begged me to give it a chance. Yeah, I don't like these stories. It's great that people change their mind and get attached. It's completely possible. But you should never manipulate somebody in this way. This is just not setting people up for success. And again, I would say she was the a-hole because she put this puppy in an unstable situation because you know that your partner doesn't like pets. And also, why are you marrying and having kids with somebody that doesn't like pets if you yourself want pets? The wife started off the a-hole in this situation, and she continues to be the a-hole, not OP, in my opinion. These past few weeks were horrible. Hershey is only a puppy and not fully trained. He wakes me up multiple times a night, barks at neighbors, pees on the carpet. Not his fault, of course, but this isn't what I signed up for. Yeah, and it sounds like OP is really understanding. He does not blame the puppy, rightfully so. He knows that he didn't want a puppy, so he didn't get a puppy. Yeah. My wife lets the dog on the sofa. She lets him lick people and jump on them. She uses words like puppers and doggo. Created an Instagram. Well, I use pupper and doggo. I don't think that's inherently incorrect, but, each to their own. Created an Instagram focused on him and considers herself a dog mom. 2 days ago, I finally lost it. And again, none of the puppers, the Insta, the dog mom, none of those are incorrect. That's purely life choices. And again, it just sounds like she was not the woman for you. You guys are incompatible. You don't like parts of who she is, so you guys just shouldn't have been together. 2 days ago, I finally lost it. I told my wife that she had to find a new home for Hershey. I hadn't warmed up to him and it wasn't working out. I said that we'd feed him and take care of him while he found a good family, but we would not keep him. My wife called me heartless, saying the kids were already attached and Hershey was family. Yeah, that makes your wife the a-hole, because why are you introducing a dog to your home and getting your kids attached to them when you know that you're not likely going to be able to keep them because your partner doesn't like dogs? Everyone I've talked to about this sides with her, and one told me there was something seriously wrong with me. I feel bad about this whole ordeal, but I never wanted to be in this situation in the first place. I feel cornered and don't want to hurt my kids or my wife. I know it's also unfair to Hershey. Am I being unreasonable? Am I the a-hole? And so let's get some comments from other users. Paperwings451 says, not the a-hole. You and your wife are a unit, and you have to agree to financial liabilities together. That is what a pet is. Same with kiddos. You gotta be on the same page. Surprising you with a liability is not okay. Also, you do not want a dog in your house. She knew that, and she did it anyway. That's unacceptable, and you two need to have a talk about mutual respect. It sounds like your wife spends too much time on the internet and thinks everything in real life will work out like the fantasies she sees online. Arizanio replies to that saying, this is like the cheaper version of getting deliberately accidentally pregnant. How unfair to OP and the dog. Maleficent ad 3958 says, also, there was a post recently where a single mom talked about how much her daughter wanted a horse so she can compete. The single mom could not afford it. Just because the daughter wanted it, it didn't mean that said daughter got said horse. So all these arguments saying OP has to keep it because the kids want it is nonsense. Yeah, because it's not the kid's dog. It's the parent's dog. That is what happens. Like, legally, the kids can, like, they're not responsible for the dog, especially at that age. It's the parents' responsibility. The parents are the dog owners in that situation. Would all the people on the side of the wife insist OP keep a horse if the kids and wife insisted it? A corporate monster says, not the a-hole, but it's too late to do anything without hurting your kids. I remember the dog I was allowed to have for a week 25 years ago that ran away, in quotation marks, while I was at school. Sucks as a 6-year-old. I immediately lost trust in my mother on that one. I don't care about your wife, but you're in a tough spot with the kids. I'd gauge their reaction before doing anything. Edit. Just thought about this because my son is about the same age as your daughter. His dog is his best friend since the pandemic with no kids really to interact with. Taking it away wouldn't be taking away a pet in his eyes. It's taking away a friend that's always there. And yeah, like, that's the tough thing too, is like now your kids are attached to this dog. I would have, like, immediately, if I were OP in this situation, Hershey would have not have stayed in that house that day. Hershey was going back straight to where Hershey came from. That is the only thing where it sucks a little bit in terms of OP, is letting the kids get attached to the dog for as long as they have already. Maleficent ad 3958 responds to that saying, I don't know about that. I've read too many posts where people were expected warm-blooded plushies they could put on shelves when bored/tired, but are angry when said toy needs way more training and work than expected, and their family and friends point that out to them. If you're in a relationship, don't get a dog without consulting your partner. VR Craft Author replies to OP's post saying, everyone sucks here. Your wife is absolutely the a-hole for foisting a dog on you that she knew you didn't want, but this is her fault, not the kids or the dogs. So if the kids are attached to it, it would be unfair to punish them for her mistake. What you should do instead is insist the whole family get on board and train it properly. If you can't afford obedience schools, find some videos from dog trainers on YouTube. Make sure wife and kids understand everyone has to do the same thing to train the dog properly. And yeah, this is absolutely the case. If you're not making progress with training your dog, a lot of the times part of the issue is that not everyone in your house is treating or training your dog the same way as you do, thus causing confusion and hindering the training process. There's no reason he can't learn to stay off the couch if you all work at it. If the wife insists on breaking the rules and letting Hershey run wild, tell the kids you have to get rid of the dog because she sabotaged his training. Okay. And this last line, I personally don't think it's a great thing for parents to bash one another in front of their children. That seems a little bit manipulative, so I wouldn't do that. But OP responds to that person's comment saying, this might be a good way to go about it. Training him and establishing boundaries could ease things, but I'm still uneasy. I'm still not crazy about having a pet, and getting rid of him down the line when my kids have only grown more attached would be difficult to say the least. Yeah, absolutely. I think if you're going to rehome him, do it responsibly and do so immediately. Don't wait longer than what you need. Sammy SFW says, not the a-hole. I'm not with you with your general intolerance about dogs, but springing it on you after you discussed it and said no is really poor judgment. A dog is a big responsibility that falls on the adults of the household. Also, it sounds like she doesn't really know how to raise a puppy, so it's not fair for the dog either. And that, I think, sums this up nicely. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. What were your takes on these stories? I always welcome respectful debate and discussion, and totally do not mind if your opinion differs from mine. So please share, especially if you've been in any situation similar to that of the OPs in the stories that we shared in this video. I will see you in the next one. Thank you so much for listening, and remember to give your dog some scriptures for me.